Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Richard Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Doesn't time fly? It's been 11 months, almost to the day, since we debated this bill last. I was going back through my notes and knew that we supported the bill. Had to refresh myself as to precisely why, or more to the point, find reasons that we shouldn't if we weren't going to. But yeah, no, it was 11 months ago, day before yesterday, that we first debated this, Mr Speaker. And when we did last examine this bill, New Zealand First indicated that we would support it to Select Committee, but not necessarily beyond, depending on what we might find within it. Once we got it on the operating table, so to speak, and cut it up and dissected it and had a look, we would decide again. And so we did that, Mr Speaker. I'm happy to report that New Zealand First is sufficiently satisfied with the bill that we will continue to support it. That doesn't mean that we think it's perfect, Mr Speaker. We do still think that it can be improved, and this has actually become a bit of a recurring theme for New Zealand First, where we find ourselves in agreement with some of the government's proposed legislation. In the roughly 50% of cases where we are in agreement with government legislation, we find ourselves thinking that in some ways they just don't go far enough. And in one aspect at least, that's the case with this bill. So I want to focus on that, Mr Speaker, and I want to raise a flag if in fact the psychic and perhaps prescient Mr Reno Tirakatini hasn't beaten me to it. I want to raise a flag that New Zealand First does intend to introduce a supplementary order paper come the committee stage when we reach the whole House to address an area where we feel this bill could be significantly improved to the benefit of New Zealand Inc. as a whole. And I say that now, Mr Speaker, because I'd very much like the government members and the Minister, and I thank the Minister for his informed contribution, to take the time, to have the time to look at what we're calling for and think about how that could be incorporated into the bill, why the outcomes that it could produce may be of benefit to New Zealand Inc. And they'll be in the area of the, as other members have alluded to, in the area of the length of time that intellectual property owners have as a protected period for their IP. And it centres on the fact that we regard the proposed increase, even as it has been extended by the officials after the Select Committee stage, as being insufficient, or if not insufficient, then at least not as good as it could have been. So, Mr Speaker, what we'll be asking Parliament to consider at the committee stage is an increase beyond the levels which even the industry itself was asking for. And I don't know why the consensus of the industry, and it was a consensus amongst many of the submitters, was to request an extension from the existing 5 years to 10 years rather than the 8 which was proposed. And I'm wondering if perhaps they had to think about this and thought maybe that's as much as they were going to get. But it became apparent, Mr Speaker, and I did question a number of submitters and make suggestions. It became apparent that that almost all of them were certainly open to the idea and keen on the idea of getting as much protection as they could get. So I do wonder whether it goes back to they perhaps made a value judgment as to how much extended protection the Parliament was likely to offer, and aimed at that. And I wonder if perhaps we could go beyond that. So, Mr Speaker, there has been some discussion as to the relevance, and my colleague from the Greens raised the issue of the TPPA. There was some concern that whatever we did in terms of the length of period of protection for IP under this bill, TPPA would overwrite it. The 10-year period that was suggested would be the same as that which was suggested within the TPPA, some technicalities aside. I don't actually think that's relevant, Mr Speaker, because for all of the contention around the TPPA and the fact that we don't support it as a party, it's not going to happen anyway, because both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have come out and said that they oppose it. One of those two will become the next president of the US. They will veto it, and the TPPA, as we have been negotiating it, won't fire. Not to say that something else may not grow out of the negotiations that have led up to it. In a few more years' time, other countries may get together and may create something else that was started life as TPPA and has become something else. But what we're faced with now is an industry that requires some changes. We have this proposal that's the TPPA, which is kind of a side issue. We've got some extensions that have been proposed to it, and irrespective of any other legislative changes or treaty changes that may come to affect this, what we've got at the moment with this bill is a set of alterations to current legislation that we're looking at as a Parliament, regardless of what may or may not happen in the future. So, Mr Speaker, on the face of it, and as other members have made mention of, the bill does ostensibly extend the protected period from 5 years as it currently is, beyond the 8 years that was originally proposed, to the 10 years as the officials have recommended following the submissions process in the Select Committee. And that supposedly will bring us into line with Australia. But when you actually look at the fine print, Mr. Speaker, it's not quite that straightforward, because what happens in Australia is that they get a 10-year blanket protection on any first use. What's being proposed for us under this 10-year extension is that we have the period extended to 8 years, and then there's a further 3 that can be tacked onto that for additional uses. So it's kind of, they'll get the extra, the total of 10 years, but only if more innovative uses are added onto it. So it's not really quite the same degree of protection that other jurisdictions provide. So what we're suggesting, what that means is that if you're an owner of an IP, you can only get the maximum protection if you continue to evolve the uses, the applications that the particular compound that your IP refers to can be utilised for. So, and some other jurisdictions do have, as I think the Chair mentioned, Mr. Speaker, some jurisdictions do have a greater degree of protection, running out to 12 and 15 years in Europe, and the US, and Japan. And again, that's a variety of blanket protections and then additional protections depending on changes in use types. So what New Zealand First will be doing, Mr. Speaker, by way of supplementary order paper, is proposing that the 10-year complex period that's been proposed by officials and has been accepted by the committee be extended to a blanket period of 12 years, with an extension possible to 15 years, when the additional new uses and so forth are added onto it. Reason we're doing that is that this will encourage agrochemical companies, veterinary medicines companies, to look seriously at. It will give them another reason to look at relocating their current research and development activities and their manufacturing activities from where they're currently based to New Zealand. Because this is the sort of foreign investment that New Zealand First welcomes. What? And you did hear that right. New Zealand First does welcome the right kind of foreign investment. When you have companies that don't currently operate here, that aren't going to because of the environment, when you can give them a reason to come here and to bring in new money that wouldn't have come here otherwise, and to invest in new businesses that wouldn't have existed otherwise, and to create new jobs that wouldn't have existed otherwise, and generate new foreign exchange that the country would not have had the advantage of otherwise, that is good foreign investment. Foreign companies coming here and simply buying up houses and buying farms and buying existing businesses and not injecting any new capital into the country and directing the money offshore is not good investment. We believe that a bill that gives companies of this type an incentive, a further incentive, to bring their business to New Zealand and to do their high-tech R&D here is a good thing for New Zealand. And that's the primary reason why we are proposing this. New Zealand First is proposing this further alteration to the bill, Mr. Speaker. But irrespective of that, we are continuing to support the bill. We do think, as I say, that it can be further improved, and I will reiterate that I would seriously like the government members and the Minister in particular to seriously look at the proposal when we bring it up, to have a look at how they think that may be able to be incorporated in how the bill functions, in their approach to the industry as it relates to the bill, perhaps consult with some of their industry contacts, and have a serious think about, okay, we are making this bill better than it was originally proposed already. I think we can make it better again. That is what our suggestions and proposals will be based upon. Irrespective of that, we do support the aims and intentions of the bill. We do think that it will be a good thing for New Zealand, for the companies that operate here, for the farmers and horticulturists and everybody else in the sector who take advantage of those advances in chemical science that make agriculture easier and better and cleaner and safer. And for those reasons, we will continue to support the bill anyway, but we would like the government and other parties to give serious consideration to making it even better than it's going to be. Thank you.